Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Town of Los Gatos Joint Town Council Parking Authority Successor Agency meeting of December 17th, 2012, which I am now calling to order. I ask the clerk to do the roll call, please.
Councilmember Joe Brzezinski.
Here.
Councilmember Marcia Jensen.
Here.
Councilmember Diane McNutt.
Here.
Vice Mayor Stephen Leonardis.
Here.
Mayor Barbara Spector.
Here. Before we begin, I would ask all of you who I know are sitting with cell phones in your pocket or in your purse to turn those off or at least put them on to vibrate. And also, even though this is a study session and we will not be making decisions per se, if you wish to speak to us on this issue, I would ask that you fill out a card, probably in the seats in front of you, and hand that card to our clerk over here to my left. Having said that, I understand that we will be going forward with the Alcoholic Beverage Policy and Entertainment Program Study Session, and I also understand that Wendy Rooney will be making the staff report.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Spector and council members. Staff has a brief presentation that's intended to first confirm the Council and Planning Commission input from the August 2011 study session. We also seek further input on two of the discussion items from that previous study session. We've outlined the recommended entertainment permit process. We're summarizing additional recommendations for the entertainment permit process that are really an outgrowth of the community outreach we've done to date. We want to present an update of the focused outreach that has occurred since the last study session. And then finally, to provide recommendations on the proposed changes to the alcohol beverage policy. And this is actually a joint team effort, and I'll be presenting the first part, and then I'll be turning it over to Marley Mosley to present the changes to the alcohol beverage policy. Great. So just a very quick background. As the council is well aware, the existing alcohol beverage policy has been in place since 2001. It discourages entertainment uses until a permit process is adopted, which is one of the reasons we're here. In 2010, the council directed staff to prepare an entertainment review process through the strategic goals. In addition to current trends in eating and drinking venues, the town is also recommending some changes to the alcohol beverage policy, also known as the ABP. And finally, in 2011, the Town Council held a joint study session with the Planning Commission to discuss both the changes to the ABP and the draft entertainment permit program. At the August 2011 study session, the Town Council and Planning Commission reviewed a survey of 9 jurisdictional practices that had active commercial areas. They also considered a draft entertainment permit process outline and reviewed proposed modifications to the alcohol beverage policy. Considerable Town Council and Planning Commission's discussion ensued during the study session, and the key themes from those discussions are listed on this slide and the next slide. As the report notes, staff is recommending incorporating most of these discussion points into the policies. However, there are 2 items, and they're on the next slide, that are underlined that staff would like to highlight for the council. And you'll see in our last slide, which is really our expectation slides, we would like to get specific feedback on should the revised alcohol beverage policy and entertainment permit program limit alcohol service to midnight. This would be a change in current policy. The report notes that staff would further evaluate this during the community outreach and further discussions with the police department, but I think it's an important enough topic that we'd like the council to provide some input on that. And the second item is whether there's a need for policies that are unique to different parts of town. We know that we have very similar patterns throughout town where we have commercial areas that are surrounded by residential areas, but there are some unique areas that maybe a different type of policies may be more appropriate. In addition to these 2 that have been outlined, staff is also asking, and you'll see in the last expectation slide, concurrence of these themes that we heard from the last meeting, and staff's recommended way to incorporate those. Based on direction from the previous study session, staff did some additional surveying and tried to focus on communities that were more similar to Los Gatos in terms of size and maybe the types of policies that they would be implementing. Entertainment and alcohol policies were obtained from the cities of Napa, Sonoma, Sausalito, Roseville, and the town of Danville. The staff report detailed each of these jurisdictions' programs. However, I'd like to summarize the common elements of the programs. And I just have the programs up there. All the survey jurisdictions noted a concern with using a CUP for entertainment uses, since the terms and conditions and operating parameters of the business securing approval for the entertainment would be vested with the land in perpetuity, unless the CUP was requested to be modified or revoked. All jurisdictions but Danville had multiple processes for various kinds of entertainment permits that corresponded to the type of permit. For example, some permits are processed administratively, while others require planning commission and council public hearings. So they tended to correspond to the level of entertainment that was going to occur and where that would occur. Finally, again with the exception of Danville, which does not really have regulations, all jurisdictions provide a higher level review process for entertainment that is in close proximity to residential uses. Both Roseville and Napa encourage entertainment in entertainment districts that have been created, and that's really to mitigate the impacts to residential uses. Consequently, the process for securing entitlements in these areas is a more streamlined process because they're trying to consolidate the entertainment in an area that would be less impacting. Lastly, a notable benefit of the City of Roseville's recently adopted entertainment permit ordinance is that it does allow the police chief to tailor the permit on a case-by-case basis. Depending on the size, nature, the history of the business, the police department can add special requirements to ensure public safety, such as prohibition of certain types of clothing attire, requiring an admission charge to control the amount of patrons, specifying the number of security personnel, etc. The chief of police can revoke, suspend, or modify and apply additional conditions if problems with the operation occur. So based on the outreach conducted to date and the review of other jurisdictions' best practices, staff still continues to recommend a process that separates the entertainment permit from the conditional use permit. This would allow the town to review each owner, operating staff, and business plans separately to determine whether the permit first should be issued and the types of conditions that should be imposed. The separate entertainment permit process also provides greater discretion to the police chief to immediately address problems, including permanent or temporary termination of the use for noncompliance issues. As the council is well aware, in our existing conditional use permit process, we can require compliance with the conditions. However, to be able to revoke it, we have to go through a revocation process, which requires a public notification and public hearing. It's a much lengthier process. In the entertainment permit, it could be an immediate action. That could occur even in that particular evening where the noncompliance is happening. Before walking you through the chart, I'd first like to talk about the three different, we're recommending three different processes here. One is the council's well aware of, it's the conditional use permit process. The conditional use would still remain, and it's used to establish the business, whether it's a restaurant or a bar, where the entertainment use would occur. The CUP would be used to evaluate the overall consistency of the main use, the business use, which is the bar or the restaurant, with the surrounding land uses, including adequacy of parking, traffic generations, hours of operation, deliveries, etc., just what this council does on almost a weekly basis when it meets. How that is different from the entertainment permit is the applicant would submit an application for an entertainment permit to the police department rather than community development. The permit would outline the request, the business plan relative to the entertainment component, the type of entertainment, whether it's live bands, it's DJ, VJ, number of events, the owner-manager information, and the most important, security plan. The police department would have the discretion to perform a background check, which is key, something we cannot do in a conditional use permit right now. And they can perform that on the actual applicants, silent partners, and the management staff to determine if the individuals had any prior law enforcement issues related with this type of a use. The police department would evaluate the application based on criteria that would be established, objective criteria that would be applied to, same criteria would be used in every application. And they would make a recommendation to the Planning Commission, which would then make a recommendation to the council. The operational agreement is something that we've been using for the last couple of years, and that would come into play if the CUP, which would be the CUP would be then combined with the entertainment permit as it goes through Planning Commission and Council. So if the CUP and entertainment permit are approved by the council, then an operational agreement between the town and the business would be implemented through the town attorney, the community development director, and the police chief. And the operational agreement really outlines the same type of conditions that a CUP would have, but relative to the entertainment component. So it would be the business plan, the security plan, anything that deals with that entertainment, how many events they can have, when they can have these events, hours of operation. So, and that's been working. We've been using that for the past 2.5 years, and that seems to be working very well. Finally, and most importantly, the principal advantage to separating the CUP from the entertainment permit is to safeguard so that the entertainment use is not vested with the land through the CUP. And this would be a change in current practice, because right now we do have old CUPs that do have an entertainment, and they're vested with the land. And unless the applicant agrees to open that CUP to change a condition or something, or unless the town revokes that CUP for noncompliance, that entertainment is vested. In the process we're proposing, if a business secured their entertainment permit, secured their operational agreement, and ended up terminating, then a new applicant, a new someone leasing the business or buying the business would have to apply for an entertainment permit and for an operational agreement. So let me walk you through the chart, though. I think this is a little bit easier to read than the table that we had in your staff report. So if you look down the left-hand column, you'll have the different types of processes, starting with a CUP application that'd be submitted to the planning division. The next one would be a entertainment permit issued to the planning division. The next one's an entertainment permit issued to the police department. The next box is a DRC, which is a staff level review. The next box down is Planning Commission public hearing. The next box down is Town Council public hearing. And last box is the operational agreement. Coming across the top, we have our 3 different types of permits. I would say type 1 is the most, if you want to call it, intensive entertainment, and that's where you're proposing entertainment in conjunction with alcohol service or late night hours. Going across the top, type 2 is establishment proposing entertainment without alcohol service, but with amplified music, so it might be more of a teen environment. And then type 3 would be for establishments proposing non-amplified entertainment without alcohol service or late night operations. Also could be for restaurants, and this was specifically feedback we received from the stakeholders, that how about a restaurant that has jazz during Sunday brunch? Should they be put through that higher level of review? So staff is adding this for the council to give some feedback on. Is that something that should be processed more administratively if that entertainment would be ending at, say, 5 o'clock or at 4 o'clock, whatever time is decided upon and established in the proposal? So where you see the X's in the box, that would outline the process. So as you can see in the type 1 permit, that would require a CUP application to the planning department, an entertainment permit application to the police department. It would require a planning commission public hearing, town council public hearing, and if approved, an operational agreement. Compared with a type 2 permit, which would have a CUP application submitted to the planning commission, the planning staff, an entertainment permit to the planning staff because it's not involving that higher level of entertainment. And we are recommending that that would be processed through just the planning commission, a public hearing through the planning commission. As the council is well aware, appeal rights would always apply and it could be appealed to the council. The last type 3 permit that we discussed would be a staff level review through our regular design review committee process, which is a notified process and is held as a public meeting. And that would involve the submittal of an entertainment permit application to the planning division and then a DRC level of review. So based on the input that we've received so far through our outreach, and that's really, as I don't want to steal Marnie's presentation, so she'll tell you who that outreach was. Of course, you've read the report and you know who it was with. We do have a couple of additional recommendations that we would like to incorporate into the policy, into the entertainment policy. And I've actually categorized them by facility or venue, security plan, police department, and entertainment permit review criteria. Basically, we're hearing that that entertainment should be in a fully enclosed building, that it should not be allowed to be outside. Outside entertainment in the plaza or music in the park are different, or as the councils are well aware of, are handled through a different process, which is a special activities permit through the police department. So this would be entertainment that, let's say, one of the restaurants downtown want to put an ensemble out in an outside patio. What staff is recommending is that that not be allowed, that any entertainment needs to be in a fully enclosed building. We're also recommending that entrances and exits should be the furthest from adjacent residential uses. And that is to the best of ability. Obviously, there's going to be some venues that do not have ingress, egress in the public area, and there still is some in the residential area. But I think moving forward, we should really, that should be something we evaluate. The council, the staff should evaluate and make recommendations to the council that maybe this location is not the appropriate location for entertainment venue because it's too closely related to the residential neighborhood near it. Also that if there is outside seating that's in conjunction with a restaurant that has entertainment, that outside seating be closed at 10 p.m. We right now have conditions on some of our existing CUPs and in operational agreements that allow a little bit later, and we're hearing that that is some concern from the residents that live nearby. And that would be for establishments that are within 300 feet to residential uses. From the security plan standpoint, staff is recommending that the town have approval over the security personnel and make sure that they're controlling congregating patrons, not only in the establishment, but those that are actually congregating in the parking lots before or during the operation and after hours too, that they're dispersing people. One of the issues we hear is that the business may be closed, but patrons are still in the parking lots and they're making noise and they're not leaving. They're still continuing to party, and so that's creating a lot of concerns for the neighbors. Also, that trained security personnel would be used to discourage patrons from parking in surrounding areas. Some of the intrusion into the neighborhoods problems are related to people parking in those neighborhoods. From the police departments, we're recommending that the police department establish a fee that would be based on the cost of the service to provide that service. The police chief would have the discretion to temporarily close down a portion or all the business, as we talked about earlier. The police department would have the discretion to disqualify a security firm if they feel that they're not an adequate firm to provide the level of service that the town requires. And finally, that we have not shown you any of that criteria that the police department be used to evaluate these entertainment permits, because that's a work in progress. And as we get through this process, we'll start crafting that criteria. So this concludes my portion of the entertainment part. I'm going to be turning it over to Marnie, where she'll be talking about the alcohol beverage policy recommended changes. She'll summarize the community outreach process to date, next steps, and then our last slide is a summary of really what the input that staff is requesting tonight.
Ms. Rooney, I want to give the council the opportunity to ask you questions. Should we wait until after the next presentation? What would you suggest?
I think because they're pretty intertwined, these policies, why don't we go ahead and let Marnie finish, and then we can both take questions as they come.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you and good evening. Mine should be fairly brief. I just wanted to discuss with you some of the changes that we are proposing or considering for the existing alcoholic beverage policy, specifically modification of the language regarding appetizers versus full meals when alcohol is served. Due to current dining trends, staff is recommending that small plates and appetizers, certain types of appetizers, be considered a meal service when alcohol service is limited to beer and wine or wine. It should be discussed, however, that how this would apply for businesses such as Chin Chin, just to give an example, that focus on wine but still have a full liquor license. In addition, many discussions have occurred around the issue of serving alcohol before food is ordered or when patrons are waiting for their tables. The language within the current alcohol policy would not permit this, but staff is proposing a revision that would clarify this allowance. The current alcohol policy requires that a benefit to the community be provided in order to permit alcohol service past 10 p.m. Since the required findings to grant a CUP, no matter what type, require that the application provide or meet some need within the community, and in order to remove confusion between this requirement and the community benefit requirement for traffic increases, staff is recommending that this language be removed. Staff is also looking to provide further definition and requirement for wine bars and wine retail establishments that do not conform to the town's restaurant standards for review. We are continuing to review other jurisdictions for potential consistency. The document would provide the necessary language to connect this policy with the draft entertainment permit process in addition. And Wendy did go over a lot of the discussion that did happen with the Broadway neighborhood, as well as our meeting with the business owners. We did meet with the members of the Broadway neighborhood several times in order to discuss what's currently going on and what impacts them, as well as to try to get some feedback as far as how we could potentially work with the businesses and draft this ordinance to help reduce those impacts or possibly eliminate them. So most of the feedback that we received was that their main concerns are stemming from customers parking in their neighborhoods and the noise and the public drunkenness and vandalism that occur from that intrusion into their neighborhoods, as well as, again, the general noise from music and patrons of those businesses that particularly for late night operations. As far as our meeting with the business owners, I think that happened in October. Some of the main feedback that we got was just in regards to some of the confusing or overly complex nature of the number of elements involved in the proposed permit process, and any potential in reducing those or reducing the impact to their current allowances, as well as not opening up their CUP and potentially impacting the allowances that they currently enjoy and rely on. As far as where we are going from here, we do anticipate having a full community outreach meeting sometime in probably late January, early February, as well as then potentially taking, based on that feedback, taking the draft documents back to Planning, or not back to Planning Commission, but to Planning Commission for their consideration sometime in March of next year, and then following up with Council potentially in April. Again, that's what our goals are. We'll see based on how the community outreach goes, where that leaves us. And then just to recap and bring us back around, as previously discussed, staff is requesting town council input and direction on concurrence on key discussion points from the August 2011 study session, and the suggestions on how to address the points. In particular, should the alcoholic beverage policy and the entertainment permit program limit alcohol service to midnight? Is there a need for policies that are unique to different areas of the town? In addition, staff also requests feedback on the proposed entertainment permit process, as well as the additional recommendations in the staff report. And finally, in regards to the alcoholic beverage policy, should or would the revisions of that policy apply to existing establishments or be limited to new or modified applications? And would the allowance for small plates apply only to beer and wine service operators? That concludes my and Wendy's presentation. We are here for questions.
All right, and for the people listening and attending, and for the council, what I anticipate we will be doing here is the council will now have the opportunity to ask questions of staff. I know there are a lot of issues before us. Anyone wishing to address us from the audience, please fill out a card and you will have your opportunity. And then we will be coming back to the council. And at that time, I can discuss with you how I anticipate we will be going forward. So let's start with questions of staff. Does anybody here have questions of staff? Ms. Jensen.
Thank you, Mayor. I have actually a procedural question of how you would like us to go about doing this. Do you want us to do it by section of the report? That is, do we agree with the key points from August 2011? Do you want to break? So would you prefer that it be broken down or ask all the questions at the same time?
So these would be questions as opposed to input?
Okay. You're right. Okay. If I do not have a question.
I anticipate that the input from the council will occur after we have questions of staff and then input from the audience, and then we'll get to input. Ms. Jensen.
I actually do have a question. I was confused in the chart that was put up and confused in the staff report. The proposed 3-tier permitting process under type 1, it indicates that eventually that permit process is going to go to the Planning Commission. Is that an information item, or is that the ability of the Planning Commission to actually have public testimony and decide whether or not they also agree with that permit, or is the permit completely divorced from the planning process?
No, it's anticipated that the Planning Commission would review this as they do a conditional use permit right now for restaurants or alcohol use. So they would be reviewing the merits of the entertainment permit as well as the CUP with the recommendations from planning staff on the CUP, recommendations from the police department on the entertainment permit, holding a public hearing, taking public input, and then making a recommendation to the town council.
Other questions, Ms. Jensen? Anyone else? Yes, Ms. McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. I have several. Shall I just do them all?
I'll tell you the same thing I told Ms. Jensen. If there are questions,
There are
go at it.
questions? Yeah, okay. In no particular order. When you did the outreach to the Broadway neighborhood, how did you define Broadway neighborhood? Are you just talking about the residents on Broadway, or were there other people downtown that you included?
We actually were the Broadway neighborhood outreach to us, and so we met with 2 representatives, and they told us they are representatives of the Broadway neighborhood. They never defined how far out that was, so I'm not sure what the extent is of that. I know it's not just adjacent to downtown. It was up Broadway further, because one of the representatives told me that she lives further up Broadway. So that was really their outreaching to us, and then we felt like we did not have adequate time to talk with them, and so we invited them back for another meeting. Further outreach to the general public, we anticipate with the forthcoming outreach process.
So people that I would categorize as not just general public, but people who live on West Main, who live on Wilder, who live on Bean, et cetera, who are in fairly close proximity to active downtown restaurants and current places where there are sometimes music. Will they be getting any kind of special notification or encouragement to participate?
We are anticipating doing very similar notifications we're doing with the affordable housing overlay zones right now, and that's full quarter page or half page ads in the paper, story in the paper, as much public outreach as we can to get interested people involved.
And mailings also?
We in the AHAs we have sent out mailings to everyone. The challenge would be is defining how far do you it was fairly easy with the AHAs. We defined, actually we went beyond state requirements and went 500 feet out, but we hadn't really discussed that yet. If we were planning to do mailings, it would be very significant, because I would say if we're going to send notices to those folks, we should be sending notices to everyone that is on the boulevard also, or at least in close proximity to the boulevard, just to treat everyone similarly.
So I have an opinion about that, but I guess I'll wait till later for the opinion, and I'll just go on to my next question, right? Have you done any more work on defining what entertainment is? Because in the original study session, there was quite a laundry list of things, including magicians and prestidigitators, I think was one of the words that was in there.
We have not yet, no. We anticipate doing that. We didn't really want to get out ahead of the council. We wanted to come back to the council and just confirm the direction that we heard, or the input that we heard at the last meeting. And we'll then start. I should say we've been surveying other jurisdictions. We just haven't drafted anything, but we have been starting to collect information from our jurisdictions and seeing how they define entertainment and what variations of entertainment they have.
And then just a couple more. On the question to council about applying retroactively, is staff asking if this should be applied retroactively to those businesses that we have approved recently in the last 2 or 3 years, where we said, and should an entertainment policy be developed, then you're going to be subject to it? Or are you saying retroactively to anyone who has a CUP?
For those that have applied in the last few years and have the condition applied, they will be required to comply with the new regulations. And that dates back probably about 2.5 years ago, we started applying that condition. In terms of retroactively applying, I think our town attorney would probably comment that it would take an action on the applicant's behalf or the town's behalf to have that occur. In other words, an existing business, if they wanted to change their business operation somehow, which necessitated this additional town review of that, then should the new policies apply. we heard feedback from the stakeholder group of the business owners that I just maybe want to change a little aspect of my business plan. I may want to change the hours. I don't feel that the new regulation should then apply to my business. So that's that distinction that we want to get some feedback from the council on. Should that be a judgment call on the staff's part when an application is submitted and that taken forward in the process? Or should we have a clean policy that if you request to reopen your CUP for any reason, they're going to have to comply with the new policy?
Okay, and then my last question at this time is, you made reference to community benefit and cleaning up the language in alcohol so it's not confusing with the other community benefit. And I thought that we were getting rid of that other community benefit language also because it was not, it was confusing with mitigation efforts. So where are we in that, and why are we still worrying about mixing those two up if in fact both of them could be removed?
Well, I think the reason that we're suggesting in the alcohol beverage policy to remove it is because the if you want to say the termination of the community benefit program that we now use really is tied to the approval of impact fees. If you go back to the study session, on the same night as this one, as a matter of fact, we talked about that until such time the impact fees, which community benefit we believe was really truly intended for in the first place, once those impact fees are brought forward to the council and approved, at that point the community benefit then would be policy would be terminated. So this process may be ahead of that, so we thought we might as well go ahead and remove it now from the alcohol beverage policy so we wouldn't have to go back and amend it again.
Okay, I think it's all for now. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else have questions? Ms. Jensen?
Just brought to mind another question. When I was reading through this, I wondered why Campbell wasn't one of the jurisdictions that we looked at, since it's a neighboring community with a new and emerging entertainment and dining experience.
I believe in the first survey back in 2011, we did include Campbell. I'm looking back to see, and I realize that that's not attached to my report, but I'm probably about 99% sure that Campbell was originally reviewed in that original survey of 9 jurisdictions. Ironically, Campbell says that their policies they're watching us to see what we're doing, and then they will be considering their amendments.
And Campbell was part of the original survey, and it was discussed by the council and the planning commission at that first meeting.
Thank you. Other questions? All right, seeing none. Oh, Mr. Brzezinski, please.
Councilwoman McNutt raised the question of definition of entertainment. Is it your intent that we're going to try to work through definition of entertainment tonight?
No.
Because for my difficulty then is how do you look at, for example, a type 1 permitting process where the restaurant serves alcohol late into the night, but the intention is to have a piano with no amplification. Mm-hmm. Does that individual playing the piano constitute entertainment that then requires our somehow controlling through this rigorous process versus what would be type 3? The only difference is probably the alcohol and the 5 o'clock closure that is ministerial, basically. So that would be something I would like to have addressed. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And staff's comment would be that I think what we're seeking from, obviously this is a study session, so we're really seeking some conceptual direction, and that when the entertainment policy comes back in a format that would be reviewed for making determinations on, we'd have those definitions and we'd make sure that those nuances, I think staff is very cognizant in reviewing other processes and procedures from our jurisdictions, that there are definitely those nuances. For instance, you really don't want to put a great example, someone that is playing piano during dinner, even though the restaurant is serving alcohol, through an intensive process. So we recognize that there will be variances to this as you look at the various types of entertainment. There may be a different way of defining it. It may not be defined as entertainment. There could be a different way of defining that.
Further questions? All right, seeing none. Some of you have turned in cards. I'm getting a few more. All right, again, if you intend to address us on this issue, please submit a card. First, and you will each have 3 minutes to speak to us. I have Dustin DeRollo.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Dustin DeRollo. I'm one of the owners of Los Gatos Bar and Grill. I'm going to drop off a letter that we drafted up today with the clerk so that you can have some of our concerns and thoughts on paper. We apologize for the late notice, but we were just notified about this meeting. One of the first issues in our letter and an area for concern has been the stakeholder outreach process. We've asked since last year, after your last study session, to be an active participant in the process. We haven't received any notices of outreach meeting or this meeting, in fact. So going forward in the future, we very much want to be a partner and at the table to help provide you input. We think we have valuable perspective to offer, especially with some of our experiences in other cities. We do have a concern with what as best we can understand based on the staff memorandum, what could be kind of a two-tier system of those businesses that may operate in the exact same manner, but one would have to go with the new policies that are put in place, and another may not, and one would have to pay additional fees, and another may not. So we do have some concerns over fairness. We also have some concerns over specific issues that were presented here tonight. Some of it may just be an issue of clarity. For example, on security, we employ over 18 trained and state licensed security personnel. It's not clear in the proposed recommendations if the town now is going to be in the business of training and certifying those, or if the criteria is going to be hire somebody that has the state certification, but we're happy to work with the police department on figuring that out, but having some clarity there would be helpful. Also, as it relates to parking, we are committed to being a good neighbor and trying to discourage our customers from parking in adjacent areas. The recommendation asking that we have security personnel someplace in the parking lot to discourage people to park in the neighborhoods. We think that's probably going to be logistically tough to pull off. However, we have implemented a voluntary program where we're giving to our patrons maps on where the allowable parking is away from the neighborhoods. So that's something we're doing on our own, and we want to talk to you about how we can implement other ideas like that wouldn't be burdensome on the business. And the final thing we have a concern about is the idea, and again, we just might not have the detail on charging for police calls for service. We want to be good operators. Our concern is that we not have an environment where business owners are afraid to call the police. So just having a better understanding of how that would work in the future would be very valuable. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you, sir. Keith Quansing? Quasney.
It's like it should have been spelled correctly, but I probably write like a doctor.
Yeah, if you'd written better, I would have gotten it right.
Exactly, correct.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure talking to everybody on the council. My name's Keith Quasney. I'm from Carrie Nations in Los Gatos. Here primarily to talk about just the entertainment aspect of the discussion tonight. So I find myself in a unique position where, we're real simple request is that we just want to have one night of jazz where we have someone come in and we employ people, give them jobs. They play jazz for 3 hours, 9 to 12. And, we'd like to see a process that is simple and easy for us to consume in order to get our, in order if the council thought it would be appropriate, or the police chief in this case, if that's the jurisdiction, would think it was appropriate, that they could give us that approval and we can go off and do those things. So as you look at the permit process, sometimes you look at it in terms of, well, if you serve alcohol seems to be the point where you're actually adding more requirements to the process, I guess I'd ask to look at how you define entertainment, back to Mr. Perniski's comment, how you would identify the entertainment and the level of that entertainment to what you want to try to do. So, jazz, semi-amplified jazz from 9 to 12, should it be going through this rigorous process, or is that something that maybe has a more rapid process, a fast track, that we could put ourselves through to get there rather than go through the process of 9 months? If you look from 3 months ago, it's going to take us about 9 months to a year to get jazz, if that's approved in our establishment. And we'd like to give our patrons the opportunity to listen to jazz in our establishment in a more fast track positioning. So that's something that, as you go through this process, I'd like you to consider is fast track both ways, right? If it's easy to approve it fast track and the severity is not go through the full process, then that's a good thing. But you could equally take away those privileges or permits in a fast track manner as well. So something that we'd like to have you consider as you kind of go through these discussions, because we think it's a good benefit to the town. We're employing people. People are now unemployed on certain days because we can't have jazz anymore, and I think it's for the overall economy a good thing.
Thank you. Michael Verga.
Good evening. I'm Mike Verga, live on 46 Broadway. I'm thrilled to hear some of the concerns that we had on Broadway are being incorporated into this policy, limiting the hours of alcohol service, the CUP possibly not going with the property, trying to keep everything fully enclosed inside, the egress issue, keeping away from the residents, and also monitoring the parking and trying to get the patrons of the various establishments to disperse, quietly and whatever the bars can do. And also, just having listened to the gentleman from Carrie Nations, I also would like to encourage it to be a two-way street. I'd like to see if they want to try something, that it does become easier for them to try it, but I'd also like it to be, if something is tried and it doesn't seem to work, that, the residents are listened to, and that it can be discussed quicker and not kind of go on and on and on. So again, I'm very thrilled to hear some of the changes proposed, because it seems like you really listen to the Broadway residents.
Thank you. Kim Karloff.
Good evening. I'm not as tall as Mike. I'm also a Broadway resident. I've lived there for the past 12 plus years, along with my family, and I have a few questions and concerns, and one response. The Broadway residents, talking about that as a neighborhood, it's 70 plus people on Broadway, the Broadway extension, and Clifton. So I think that will clarify the outreach earlier this year. Some of the top questions and concerns we have is, does the new alcohol beverage policy and the new entertainment policy trump a business's conditional use permit, or does the CUP rule? Some clarity, I think, there might be needed. In your packet on the town website, it reads that the intent of the ABP is to outline the town's expectations for establishments serving alcohol and to delineate a process for reviewing applications. Expectations are well and good, but one thing that we're concerned about on Broadway is the enforcement of rules that impact everyone, businesses and neighborhoods. The question then is, how will these new policies and their regulations realistically and actually be enforced? CUPs in some of the establishments near our neighborhood are routinely flouted, and there's very little to no enforcement. We don't want to be the police force who has to call the police for those enforcement tactics. My hope is that these new policies will more positively diminish the negative impact, like noise, trash, public drunkenness, already experienced by residents who live in our neighborhood and are adjacent to some of the bars and restaurants. Thank you very, very much for listening to us in August of 2011 and throughout this year. I'm encouraged by some of the balance you're trying to represent tonight and going forward. And I think having intelligent, meaningful conversations about how we can coexist as businesses and residents in Los Gatos is extremely important. And I'd like to see the residents' voices weighed as heavily as the businesses have been in the past. Thank you for your time and your diligence on this matter.
Thank you. Richard Sears.
My name is Richard Sears. I grew up in Los Gatos. I'm a musician. I had the opportunity to play at Carrie Nations a couple nights in the summer. And I'm here to represent their interests as well. I want to thank Joe for pointing out that there is a rather large discussion about defining entertainment that relates to this issue. The Monday night Carrie Nations jazz is a rather modest endeavor that provides a meaningful community building experience to a relatively small group of people. It brings meaning to the bar experience that goes beyond just alcohol and beverage, and gives a forum for artists and musicians to develop our arts and our music in the context of a public setting, which is both meaningful for the community and the artists. And I think imposing strict and conservative measures that don't encourage these kinds of opportunities is ultimately not benefiting the town, and denying its residents opportunities to do something that could make this a much more colorful and fun town for everybody. So, yeah, I think you have an opportunity to set an example and do something that could provide a lot of happiness and a lot of meaning for some of the younger people as well as some of the older people, and I encourage you to take that chance. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Those are all the cards I have. Is there anyone else who wants to come forward and address us on this issue? Seeing no one, I'm now going to close the public testimony of this agenda item. And I'm going to go to the council now. And if you wish to weigh in on any issue, drawing back to what Mr. Brzezinski was saying earlier about, the one issue, I don't think at this point the items that we are being asked to address are finite, and so I've asked the town manager as we speak to sort of keep track and see if we have a consensus on items, and if staff has things that they wanted to address that we haven't addressed. And so he will be doing that analysis as we talk. So given that, anybody have input they want to start out with? Ms. McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. So as I understand it, I can just go through my list. There are no particular order.
Correct.
Okay. So I know that one of the things we talked about in the last study session that is still on the status report, it's in development, is, I forget how we defined it, whether it's the goal or the purpose of the entertainment policy. And I want to reemphasize how important I think that is, because I am not in favor of us using any kind of language like entertainment zone or entertainment district, because I think that has everyone leap to a certain mindset of nightclubs, general wildness, and certainly impacts on the neighborhood. And so, as we talked about before, I think what we are trying to do, and we heard it from some of the testimony tonight, is we are trying to see if we can enrich the dining and shopping and gathering experience of businesses in Los Gatos with the use of entertainment. And that goes back to, again, why entertainment is so important, that it be defined. So it is not just amplified bands late at night, but everything from Mr. Brzezinski's piano player to our jazz gentleman out here to, I don't know, we haven't defined it yet. Is it's a poetry reading? Is it a magician in the children's shops? Just kind of the full range, because we tend to get so focused on against the most extreme case that we're forgetting that we're setting a policy that's going to apply to everyone and to all circumstances. Which leads me to the first of 2 or 3 suggestions I have for how we can make this conversation going forward perhaps more clear and comprehensive. And that is, I think we need to come up with a list of potential uses and have maybe 12 or 20 hypothetical situations, again, the full gamut, so that we can then, as we look at your previous matrix, hopefully in better readable type than what we had tonight. Purple and green is not a good color combination. Black and white works really well. Is we can take these hypotheticals and say, okay, so we have a pianist playing at brunch at California Cafe. Where would they fall in this process? We have jazz one night a week at Carrie Nations. Where would that fall? We have the bar and grill entertainment. How does that fall? And so we can actually see how it would work in those situations. I also think it would be helpful for us to have an updated list of all of the CUPs, all of the businesses in town, because this is town-wide, not just downtown, that have alcohol, and those, and what kind of alcohol permit they have, those that are already permitted to have entertainment, those that have that entertainment clause in their recent CUP, or which ones haven't operated, but really to have that base of information. So again, across the board, we can see how it would really fully apply. I do believe that, as I hinted at earlier, that we need to do some really serious outreach on this. I was dismayed to hear that Bar and Grill didn't know anything about this, because that would seem to be kind of one that comes up in conversation a lot.
If I can clarify.
Oh, sure.
An invitation was given to Mr. Guerra.
Okay.
And we'll review the letter that Mr. Girolo dropped off.
All right, thank you. But I do think that it would be good to do a mailing to residents within 300 or 500 feet of all businesses that serve alcohol in the town. So that's mostly going to be clustered in about 4 or 5 areas. But I think it's important that people actually be aware of this. And let me see if there's anything else. And I also would be interested, when we come forward the next time, to have some additional input from the PD on if we start changing the closing hours of alcohol, because I've had conflicting information in the past of PD does not like everything to close all at once. They prefer to have it staggered, versus is it better to have a standard operating agreement for late night alcohol businesses. That's all for right now. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Spector. I'll jump in next here. I just want to commend staff for their work on this. I think it's very thorough, and I really do like the 3-tiered approach to the entertainment policy. I think that would cover 99% of all instances. Moving forward, of course, there will always be some kind of an anomaly, as Councilmember Brzezinski stated, but I think that can be worked with at a staff level in most cases. I like the idea of a clean policy moving forward, where Ms. Rooney said that if you go back and you want to change your CUP, that you'll have to adopt to the new policy in place. And of course, there's always will be council discretion on that, perhaps if somebody wants to appeal it. But I think moving forward, having more of a level playing field, so PD knows what to expect from everybody in the community, I think would be very helpful. what we have now is a patchwork, a quilt work of different hours and different things. And of course, I know these are different businesses and they operate differently. But moving forward, say we're approving a restaurant, why would we give one restaurant till 1 p.m. and one restaurant till 12 p.m.? Doesn't make too much sense. As far as a couple other little things that have popped up, and I know we're going to be doing more study sessions and outreach to the public. But, you know, reducing the alcohol to midnight, I think that's probably a good idea. I'm open-minded to the small plates versus the full meal. I think that's a good idea if you're serving beer and wine only. And I did see the the jazz. Is it the jazz trio at Carrie Nations a couple times, and I really did enjoy that. And I look forward to you perhaps coming back and applying for one of these entertainment permits to bring that back. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address this now? Ms. Jensen?
My issues are more concerned with the process. I like the 3-tier. I like the idea of being able to separate the permit from the CUP if that's appropriate. What I don't like, and I mean absolutely no disrespect to our police department, I don't like, as I said in August of 2011, residing the discretion to decide whether a business can open or not in the police department outside of the public process. We get into trouble in Los Gatos when we go outside of the public process. I'm not sure what the answer is to that. Perhaps the criteria that are set up for the police to review may take care of my concerns. And I'm just thinking sort of out loud, but this may be cumbersome. But perhaps a panel of the police, a business owner, a resident in the area to review a permit process rather than have that reside in the chief of police. I also share, actually, the business owner who spoke concern, which sort of goes with Ms. Karloff's concern, that what we really need to be thinking about on a lot of occasions is enforcement. And to me, that's why we have the police department. So having a private security force go and try to enforce parking seems to me to be incredibly problematic. I also can't see necessarily how they can go outside of the business. I'm also concerned, and I'm certainly not suggesting that this has occurred, but as a policy matter, it's something we should think about, whether the police department gets to approve or disapprove a security agency, because a police department may have interest in that. I don't know what the criteria is going to be, but it concerns me to reside so much discretion in one body outside of the public process. I applaud what we're trying to do here. I think it's a good idea. And I'm certainly not anti-police, and I'm not disrespecting Chief Seaman, but there are issues that we should consider when we take something out of a public process, and that's what I'm concerned with.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Brzezinski?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to weigh in reflection on this last comment, I am not averse to the police chief being in that role. I think that the public process surrounds and embeds this program as proposed. But I do believe that it is important that we do some of those things that were recommended by Mr. Varga and Mr. Sears in relationship to having some fast-track program wherein we can take an idea that may be outside anything we've discussed at this point and offer it as an opportunity for our community. And at the same time, have a fast-track withdrawal if we find that there is an issue that we did not foresee. I think it's going to be very difficult for us to come up with every single possible opportunity that might present itself to us a priori. I think what we're going to have to do is be open to the possibility of listening to the community, both the residential community and the business community, and work together to make a more vibrant use of this particular policy. I like the idea. It never even occurred to me. I'm not a Carrie Nations frequenter. I have to consider it if there's jazz there. okay? But from the perspective of what this might do to enhance even the environments of the bars and restaurants that we currently don't have a vehicle to achieve, I think has some merit, and we should investigate it. As far as the alcohol policy is concerned, I like the approach taken that we're trying to be more realistic in how people actually experience the restaurant environment. You walk in, you have your reservation, your table's not ready, you sit, you have a cocktail, you're seated. It's not the same thing as person going in, sitting at the bar 4 hours during the night, no food. I mean, I think our policies were directed towards the latter, but we ignored the former, which is more realistic in the way actually our population, every population uses the restaurant where alcohol is served. So I applaud the staff along with the rest of the council. Obviously, good job, and I do think the integration of the neighbors and the residents' responses is evident. I am looking forward to the discussion, however, of how we define entertainment, what are the components of entertainment, and really to back up and say, what are we attempting to achieve? You know, I mean, we can't not like music. That can't be the thing we communicate. It has to be something directed more towards what is problematic, and how do we then address what's problematic, not whether or not anything that has musical orientation somehow is suspect. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank staff also, and in reading through the notes of the meeting we had, study session on August of 2011, I actually thought we did a really good job, and it raised several issues and input for me. First of all, consistent, I think, what Ms. McNutt was saying. I believe we need a policy statement, a mission statement, identifying, giving direction to what we're doing. Ms. Smith in August said, who are we trying to attract to town with this policy? Mr. O'Donnell said, how do we envision Los Gatos continuing? Ms. McNutt said, what is the town trying to encourage? I believe that we need to start out with a statement about what is our objective in creating the entertainment venue, in modifying, if we are, the alcohol policy. I also agree with, I think, what Mr. Brzezinski said. We need to look at what kind of entertainment are we talking about, and we can't have a one-size-fits-all. What applies to a non-amplified piano would be different from a highly amplified dancing venue with a band or even a disc jockey. So we need to make those distinctions and those distinctions. Also consistent with what somebody else said, when this comes back to us, I think we need more information. In the report that we had, the police talked about excessive service calls and incremental public safety consequences. That was in this report. I believe when we think about this again, we make decisions, we're going to need to look at things, as Ms. McNutt noted, of how many, what are the number of venues that we have with wine, beer, alcohol? How have they increased? How have the associated police contact calls increased? If they have, I don't know. I think we need that information. I do believe that on the policies for entertainment and for alcohol, I do not think there is a one-size-fits-all for that either. I think that a venue out on the boulevard that is in the middle of a parking lot that has no residents within a mile is a lot different than somebody who lives on Broadway or University or Bean Avenue. Consistent with what I think Ms. Jensen said, and also some of the people who spoke, we do have an issue with code compliance, and I think that this issue is far greater than the alcohol policy and entertainment policy. We need to figure out how do we deal with complaints. If I hear music blasting down my street at 2 a.m. in the morning, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to get up and call the police and then not sleep the rest of the night? Or is there some other mechanism for code compliance that is different from that? I believe that is something we're going to have to deal with. Also, the transparency and public input on all processes. I think Ms. Jensen brought this up. Whether we're doing a permit or a CUP or whatever the methodology is, I believe that it has to be public and transparent. With regard to noise, the staff brought up the issue of noise, and I believe Ms. Rooney, the noise has to be, in my mind, contained within the building. Things like, we'll measure the decibels. As a practical matter, measuring the decibels outside the building isn't going to work. I mean, again, what are you going to do? Get up in the middle of the night, take your noise meter, hold it up, say, okay, it's doing X amount of decibels, and then you're going to, keep that information and then feed it into staff and the police in a couple days. Not realistic. Miscellaneous things that the staff raised. I think that a permit instead of a CUP could be a very good way to go. I think strengthening the retail component of a wine bar is a good thing. I believe that the definition of a small plate to distinguish from a snack is good, but maybe a challenge in writing and defining. I'm not objecting to moving 1 a.m. back to midnight and reading as fast as I could and looking at my notes as fast as I could. I think that is all I have. Anybody else? Then circling back to staff, there were certain direction that you wanted. Did you get it? Do you have any other questions?
I think we're largely there. We got a lot of good input as we did from the Joint Council Planning Commission meeting. In general, what I took as notes is general concurrence on the 3-tier approach, so it's not a one-size-fits-all cookie cutter, in that we should proceed down that path in keeping with a separate entertainment permit from the CUP, so we have the two processes. Clearly some concern about the transparency and public process for either the entertainment review, the operationing agreement review, as well as on the back end, the enforcement, be it code compliance, police, or police department discretion to review and act on perceived complaints and violations regarding an entertainment permit. So I'm taking there's council concern in that area, and we need to keep discretion and transparency and focus on that as we bring it back to you. Did not take a lot of comments on the hours except from one member. The small plates vis-a-vis beer and wine service, a couple of members mentioned they'd be comfortable with that, but silence on the rest. Looking up at the list of issues we wanted to raise. Other issues, Wendy, that you saw that had to be covered?
No, I think we're fine. I did originally say that we should probably talk a little bit more about hours, but as I'm hearing the feedback, I'm thinking that we may end up seeing something that hours would vary depending on the types of entertainment. So I think before we get some concrete feedback on that, we'd like to give you some options on that.
And this marks a transition, and it's one of the reasons we accelerated this to bring it back to you with Ms. Rooney's pending retirement. We wanted to come back as we do handoffs on projects within the staff to get your feedback and direction on where we are at this point. And then to follow up on a couple comments, we will look to do a more extensive outreach project process, both to business operators as well as to surrounding residents, probably through possibly 2 public meetings that could allow for that. Trying to think other comments that came forward. I think that concludes it.
All right, again, thank you to the council, thank you to staff. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjourn this meeting for, I think, 15 or 20 minutes until 7 o'clock, when our regular meeting will begin. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the December 17th, 2012 meeting of the Town of Los Gatos Joint Town Council Parking Authority Successor Agency. I would ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Councilmember Joe Brzezinski.
Here.
Councilmember Marcia Jensen.
Here.
Councilmember Diane McNutt.
Here.
Vice Mayor Stephen Leonardis.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Barbara Spector.
Here. Now, for all of you sitting out in the audience with your cell phones, please take them out of your pocket or purse and put them on silence or at a minimum on vibrate. Much appreciated. And the other request is, some people have already done this, but if you intend to speak to us this evening on verbal communications or on any part of our agenda, please fill out one of these cards, give it to our clerk over there, and she will forward it on to me. Now, at this point on our agenda, every time we have a meeting, we do the Pledge of Allegiance, except that we always have somebody from our youth community help us with the Pledge of Allegiance and leading it. And so I'm going to ask Olivia Lowe to come up here, and I want to tell you a little bit about her while she's standing up here and you can see her. Olivia is a fourth grader at Van Meter Elementary School. She is a student council representative. She participates in traffic ambassadors. You don't do that, do you? Okay. She would not do that. And Lunch Buddies programs. She loves reading, art, music, and dance. She does gymnastics and plays basketball. She is a member of K-Kids Club, a Kiwanis service leadership program for primary school students that provides students with opportunities to work together on projects that help others. Do you do all those things? All right, so at this point, assuming that I can get this on, and it is, I'm going to have you stand, and she will lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's give her a hand. Thank you. And you don't get to leave just yet. I want you to go down and shake hands, all the council people. Here you go. You get a gift, too. Thank you. All right, I believe that we are now at the presentations. We have a couple of proclamations tonight. Well, let's start with Parthenia. Why don't you come on up? And I'm going to read it from this piece of paper here, but we have a really nice, pretty one for you. Thank you. You're welcome. Whereas Parthenia M. Hicks was appointed to the position of Poet Laureate for the town of Los Gatos on April 5, 2010, with an overreaching goal to heighten the awareness of poetry in the community. And whereas during her tenure, Parthenia presented original poems for the library groundbreaking, The Ground Breaks Open, the Library Time capsule installation, Light in Los Gatos, Library Grand Opening, Rare Volumes, and the town's 125th anniversary, Song of Los Gatos. And whereas Parthenia cultivated appreciation for poetry through establishing Poetry Los Gatos Monday Night Community Poetry and Poets Canyon, creating Community Open Mic Night, Poetry Movie Night, and Poem in Your Pocket Day as part of the April's National Poetry Month, collaborating with Jade Bradbury, who we will be meeting soon, on the Art in the Council Chambers program, offering writing workshops and creating an anthology of 80 poems by Los Gatos residents and visitors, reflecting the life in Los Gatos. And whereas, through her efforts as Los Gatos Poet Laureate, Parthenia Hicks made great strides in increasing the Los Gatos community's connection to poetry. Now, therefore, the Town Council of the Town of Los Gatos does hereby render, with special appreciation and commendation, to Parthenia M. Hicks for her many contributions to promoting the awareness and love of poetry to the Los Gatos community as Poet Laureate. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It has been 2.5 swift years of representing our town through the art of poetry. And I want to tell you, it has been an honor and a privilege. And I've had so much fun. So many people have a relationship to poetry in this town, our town, and so many more would like one. It has been a gift to nurture those shyly or even secretly drawn to poetry, and to support those already firmly rooted in it. From the moment I put the call out for people to join me in support of the Poet Laureate position, and people came running in response, I have been in poetic joy. Let's just say that my contact list has quadrupled. I am honored to have been the first Poet Laureate of Los Gatos. I am proud to live in a town where poetry and art are valued. There are, of course, a few people I would like to thank from the bottom of my heart. I would like to thank Mayor Spector. Thank you. I would like to thank our wonderful town council, and in particular, Diane McNutt, who was mayor in 2010 when I became Poet Laureate. Thank you. I would like to thank our wonderful town manager, Greg Larson, and his wonderful staff, very supportive staff, for their support of this position and also of me in this position. I would like to thank Henry Bankhead from the libraries for supporting me for 2.5 years. Thank you, Henry. And very special thanks to Poetry Los Gatos, the group of writers and lovers of poetry who have been with me every step of the way, with everything from the nuts and bolts of event planning to the shaping and refining and staying on target with the overarching idea behind each event, raising the awareness of poetry in our town. And these very special people are Rita Baum, Jade Bradbury, Marianne Cook, Lynn Doherty, Mary Tomasi Dubois, Erica Goss, Victoria Johnson, Frances Roberts, Lisa Tam, and Lynette Vega. And I know some of those people are here. Could you just pop up really quickly? Just come on, you can do it. Thank you, thank you. I also want to thank the Monday Night Poetry Group at the Rec Department for showing up each month and being brave enough to explore language. This diverse group made up of all ages, all occupations, doctors, physicians, yoga teachers, musicians, a barista, a healthcare practitioner, a realtor, all formed an enriching and very lively monthly poetry practice. And I want to thank the woman in the parking lot of Lunardi's who could not remember my name, but upon seeing me, got so excited that she screamed, "Poet Laureate! Poet Laureate!" all the way across the parking lot from Lunardi's to Pete's. Breathless from running all that way, she could barely get the words out. She wanted to say, "I'm so glad we have a poet laureate in our town." I'm honored to live, to work, and to write in a setting that has been a writing haven for so many, and to walk in the writing lineage of Poets Canyon, led by Sarah Bard Field, C.E.S. Wood, Neil Cassidy, John Steinbeck, and so many more who have enriched the literary life and the literary history of our town. Our town, Los Gatos, is definitely on the literary map of our country. To me, poetry and art are the soul of a town. Perhaps the brains are behind me and all around us. Poetry and art are the soul of a town. To those in this room and in our town who are new to poetry and would like to find that language inside, I offer these words. Don't think you're not a writer just because you haven't found your way in. Stay steady. Seek support. For inspiration, just take a walk on any street, any place in this town. Write every day or as often as you can. One day, your poem will open before you like a wild blossom. And I leave you with a Los Gatos poem, a winter poem. The inspiration for it came from a cold winter night around midnight when I pulled my car out onto the darkened main street of Los Gatos after checking on a friend's cat. There in the cold and ice were 2 deer. Around midnight, winter in Los Gatos. The winter inside slips out in small ways like deer, whispering into town around midnight under the frosted moon, hooves clicking on ice crystals. Everything that was offered so easily in the blood-gorging thickness of summer pulls back, shrinks into cold, snaps into frigid as windows close. The herons edge across Fasona as the sun shuts itself down earlier and earlier. And 3,000 miles away, blue crabs hunker down in the shallow grass beds of the Chesapeake Bay, soft-shelled carapace buried in mud. Winter hunts for the heart, lulls it to sleep, calls it into rest, patches it up in the shortest and darkest hours. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, somewhat of an associated proclamation. If Jade Bradbury would please come up. And hold on to that while I read it. Whereas Jade Bradbury served on the Arts Commission from 2004 to 2011 and as chair of the Art in the Council Chambers, AICC, in January 2008 and was designated as curator for AICC in 2010. And whereas during her tenure, Jade has created nearly 30 exhibitions in the council chambers, including the ones you see right now, selecting the artist, installing the art, and managing the artist reception. And whereas Jade brought to her role as curator her education in art history, writing, and speaking training, previous work experience as an art curator, and strong connections with notable artists and other curators. And whereas, in addition to annual exhibitions celebrating the work of Los Gatos High School art students and the Los Gatos Saratoga Camera Club, Jade curated shows featuring the work of prominent local artists displaying fiber art, quilt art, printmaking, painting, and calligraphy. And whereas Jade has shared her personal and professional passion for the arts with the Los Gatos community through bringing innovative and eclectic exhibitions to the council chambers, now therefore, the Council of the Town of Los Gatos does hereby render, with special appreciation and commendation, to Jade Bradbury for her many contributions to promoting the awareness and love of art to the Los Gatos community as AICC curator. Congratulations and thank you.
Last Thursday evening, this room was a full house. It was very exciting. The artists talked to us, both of them talked to us about their process, their lives as artists, their lives in a world that's quite large out there. I didn't weep until I got home, but I will tell you this, that though I will be leaving this position, my passion and advocacy for the arts, as expressed here and all over our community, remains undiminished. I'll still be doing this. I'm helpless in the face of caring about the arts and wanting to share them with all of you. So one way or another, this is what I'll be doing, but it has been, it's such an honor. Thank you to the mayor and council, to the town of Los Gatos, to the Los Gatos Art and Culture Commission, and to the community for giving me the opportunity to do this with you. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. Next on our agenda, the closed session report.
Thank you, Mayor Spector, members of the council, and the public. The council did not meet in closed session this evening. There's nothing to report out.
All right, now we have council matters. Mr. Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Spector. In the past week, I had the great pleasure of attending Art in the Council Chambers, as just described by Ms. Bradbury, and getting to meet the artists Angie Tan Burns and Gregory Burns, whose artwork is displayed in the chamber. It was a spectacular presentation, and I'm very grateful for that opportunity, as well as a couple other events at the terraces. I got to help light the Christmas tree, and we also celebrated and presented accommodation to the terraces of Los Gatos for a 20-year anniversary.
Thank you. And I will pipe in here that along with the Vice Mayor, I was also here for the Art in the Council Chamber reception, and it was one of my favorites. It was fantastic. Anybody else? Seeing no one? Manager matters.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, only a couple items tonight. Tomorrow night here in the council chambers from 6 to 8 p.m., we will be having the public forum and discussion regarding the AHAs, the Affordable Housing Overlay Zones that are required as part of our general plan housing element as required by the state. So again, that's tomorrow night, 6 to 8 p.m. to review the proposals on their way back to Planning Commission and Council. Second, The town is closing for the holidays with unpaid furlough days for most town staff. The Civic Center administrative offices will be closed from Monday, December 24th through Tuesday, January 1st. Police and dispatch will still be operating. They're not closing for the furlough. And the library will be open except for 2 3-day periods. They'll be closed Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, December 24th through 6th, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, December 31st through January 2nd. Tonight's Did You Know is a timely one, and it will be presented by Thomas Latier, a 10-year employee of the town of Los Gatos, who graduated from Blossom Hill Elementary, Fisher Middle School, and Los Gatos High School. Thomas, if you could come forward. He's one of our street maintenance workers. Thomas.
Thank you, Greg. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Tonight's Did You Know is on storm preparation. Some tips and resources offered by the Parks and Public Works Department to help prevent flooding around your home and neighborhood. Check and clear storm grates, catch basins, drainage systems regularly and often. Ensure that waterways such as creeks, storm pipe inlets, collection racks, and hillside runoff are all clear from obstructions. One of the resources provided by the town and the Park and Public Works Department are sandbags. There is a fill your own station at the parking lot on Miles Avenue at the Balzer parking lot, next to the Balzer Field, with a 10-bag limit for town residents or business owners. Also, filled and ready bags are available at the Santa Clara Valley Water District on Winfield Boulevard in San Jose. For more information, you can visit our website at losgatosca.gov or call the Parks and Public Works Department at 399-5770. Thank you and happy holidays.
Thank you. All right, we are now to the consent calendar portion of our agenda. Mr. Manager, did you want to add something?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, there were 2 desk items circulated today related to the consent calendar. One is for item number 2, the council committee appointments, and the other was for item number 3, reaffirmation of the council's code of conduct policy. And those should be before you, and they were sent to you earlier today.
Thank you. The consent calendar will go forward now. At this point, any member of the council may pull an item from the consent calendar. Is anyone? No one from the council? Also, a member of the public may pull an item from the consent calendar. Is there anyone from the public wishing to pull an item from the consent calendar? I have no cards and no one's coming forward. All right, then looking to hear a motion on the consent calendar, noting, however, that Mr. Leonardis, or Vice Mayor Leonardis, has indicated to me that he will be abstaining from agenda item 12, and Councilmember Jensen indicated that she will be abstaining from or recusing from agenda item 11. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Przinski.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Leonardis. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. The agenda item 4 on our consent calendar was the appointment of the new poet laureate for 2012-2014. I will now ask, and she is in the audience, and I see her right there, I will now ask Erica Goss to stand up and be recognized. Thank you, Erica. We look forward to working with you and listening to you. At this point on our agenda, we have verbal communications. This is the opportunity for anyone in the audience wishing to address us on an item not on our agenda to talk with us for up to 3 minutes. I will ask that if you intend to talk with us, please submit one of these cards, and there are a number of folks who already have, and I will be calling your names. I am going to make an assumption here. Based on the number of cards that I have and the number of emails that the council and the staff have received over the past week or so, that there are a lot of folks who intend to discuss Templar sports. And so, as the mayor, and one of the things that I do get to do, I am going to put on the agenda, our agenda for February 4th, a request to the staff that they bring forward an agenda item, a study session for us to explore a conditional use permit or other restrictions relating to retailers of firearms, including the expansion or relocation of Templar sports. Mr. Larson?
Yes, we will agendize that for the council on February 4th, looking for direction from the council whether to develop a conditional use permit or other mechanism based on your request.
And that will be something that the direction that we'll be deciding on February 4th, correct?
The council would decide on February 4th whether or not to direct staff to prepare a conditional use permit, amendment, or other process to regulate firearm retailers in the future.
And also with regard to including the expansion relocation of Templar, correct?
Subject to council approval and direction, absolutely.
Thank you, sir. All right. First card here, Mike Olson. Osborne.
That would be me. I actually live in Campbell, but I work in and around Los Gatos, and I'm just here to voice my support for Templar Sports. I know some of the guys for a long time, and they're really outstanding citizens that have invested their whole life here, and they really care about their community. They've got, between them, decades of experience in not only sports, but also law enforcement and military. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Osborne.
Yes, ma'am.
Got it right now. Miriam Watson.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and board members, council members. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. I'm here tonight, one, to thank you very much for your service. The work that you do is phenomenal, and I follow you, and I appreciate all the time and energy you spend above and beyond for our communities. Thank you very much. What brought me to this meeting, though, tonight is the issue that you raise, Madam Mayor, regarding Templar sports. And I'm very pleased to hear that you have placed this issue on the February agenda for a conditional use permit. It's extremely concerning to hear that this company is being allowed, or potentially being allowed, to expand and move because they've been grandfathered in, as I understand it. And I think that that's a very important issue for this council to address. And it should be taken, obviously, with the utmost concern for the public safety. I appreciate the comments of the speaker before me, and I'm sure this is a wonderful company with very responsible owners. However, the issue of firearms in our community is extremely serious and must be taken so by this council. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Cynthia Jean.
Hi. Thank you, Ms. Mayor, and members of the council and public. My name is Cynthia Haeng. I live in Los Gatos at 205 Lester Lane, and I'm a quality assurance professional in the medical device industries, as well as the mother of an 8-year-old daughter. I am here to speak against the opening of Templar Gun Store. The reason is that I believe the community and my family's opinion should have been considered before allowing the opening. I understand that it's very easy to purchase weapons in this country. And under the current lack of gun control, and because guns do kill, and the fact that this gun store will be close to schools, our children, and possibly individuals who should never own a weapon. Then this represents an unnecessary threat to this community, particularly children. I do not feel safe under the current lack of gun control in this country. More guns in the hands of the wrong individuals will just bring unnecessary danger to all of us. I beg you, please, as a professional that works in the medical device industry to cure illnesses, and as the mother of an 8-year-old daughter, thank you.
Thank you. Please, we try and get through our meetings as professionally and quickly as we can. Carrie DeChico?
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me? Great. My name's Carrie DeChico. I live on Almendra Avenue, and I work locally, and I have 2 children that attend Dave's Avenue. I came last minute, so I don't have any real prepared comments, but I very much appreciate that this is going to be looked into, and I am referring to the Templar Sports. When I heard that this was happening, I felt like someone wasn't taking care of me. You guys do a fantastic job on so many levels, but for this to slip through just because legislation or coding from 1987 didn't prevent it is tragic. I grew up in Oklahoma, so I've been around guns since I was little, but this world has changed. And back then, I really believe guns didn't kill people, people killed people. Well, now guns are getting in the wrong hands, and guns can help someone kill not one but multiple people in a matter of minutes. And it's not safe, at least not in this community. And what I'd ask for is that now that we have this out in the open, that there be some accountability. I mean, I think you can see from the public response that this is something that we are very concerned with. And I wouldn't feel right knowing, and I'm sure I bear no ill feelings towards the company. I'm sure they're very, very trustworthy, respectful. You name the word. I can't sleep at night now because of what happened on the East Coast. The timing on this, I think it's fresh in all of our minds. But I don't want to be accountable knowing that we've opened up an opportunity here to not only stop another such business from coming in, but to prevent expansion, maybe limit the hours. And I don't think that anyone that I see as an elected official wants that accountability either. So I would just ask that over the holidays, as the violence on the East Coast winds down, as this meeting has become history, that please help us, the community, make this a wonderful place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah Weinstein?
Hi, Council. I was here last week, and over the past week, I had been wondering why I was dragging my kids down here at bedtime to voice my disappointment over this. But then Friday happened, and I realized how important this issue really is. And sales of firearms are a community issue. I realized that Templar Sports received a legal permit, but since that area was not zoned for retail, it seems to me as if there was an opportunity at that point to take a second look to see if this was the type of product offering we wanted to have in the town of Los Gatos. I feel I'm glad that we're going to be looking at this issue in February, but I feel like if there is any way in which we can also try to control the facade of the building. I saw they've put up signage already. It's very non-threatening, which is good. But I'd also like to see if there's anything we can do to prevent Templar Sports or actually encouraged Templar Sports to not advertise in our local papers, and also be encouraged not to direct mail the community. I would suggest the town would direct Templar Sports to do that, so that any exposure my children have to this business is extremely limited. This is not the town of Los Gatos that I know. I feel as though we should have talked about this before this business permit was issued. We talk about everything else, so it seems like this would have been a big moment in time that we could have discussed. And I request for my children and all families in town that the council consider controlling the ability to advertise and direct mail this organization.
Thank you. Molly Loktev.
Good evening. My name is Molly Loktev, and I live on Pine Avenue in Los Gatos. I have 2 children that attend Hillbrook and one at Green Hills Preschool. I recently learned that the retail store, Templar Sports, that will be selling firearms will be opening in Los Gatos. While I am alarmed by this fact, I am also very concerned that Los Gatos seems to have no policy on allowing this type of retail operation. Because it is in a commercial zone that is outside of the core of Los Gatos, there does not seem to be a cup requirement on this type of establishment. I believe there needs to be a conditional use permit requirement for a business that is trying to sell firearms so that there can be discussion among the community on the appropriateness of this type of business and its location. Our children deserve an appropriate process from their town on a retail establishment that can have serious consequences on our community. And I look forward to the fact that we are having this meeting on February 4th, and it sounds like we're moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Sue Farwell.
Good evening, council members. I'm here in support of Templar Sports. I think it's important to recognize that the owners are local residents. They have chosen to stay and reside in the town of Los Gatos. They grew up here and they raised their children here. It is not an easy endeavor to open and operate a retail store. The owners of Templar Sports have years of experience in their industry. I support Templar Sports as a locally owned, locally operated sporting goods store that is not, of course, near any schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean Weitzman.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm here for Templar Sports, and I do support this business. They have been members of the community for a long time. I, however, do not live in Los Gatos, but have family here. My uncle has been a recently retired firefighter for this community for almost 3 decades. And the owners here at Templar Sports are very nice, and not only is it a firearms store, it's a sporting goods store with fishing and other hiking, outdoors, and other activities. And I am pleased to say that I do support this business. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug Hamilton.
Good evening. My name is Doug Hamilton. I live at 26 Oak Hill Way. I think a lot of people that are here have already expressed their opinions about the process, and I think that's probably the most important part of this. We know that this is going to happen. There's nothing we can do about this store, but I think the process needs some attention. I think it would behoove you to have this meeting on the 4th and to think about this going forward. I am not opposed to fishing. I am not opposed to hunting. But I would like to see if there's any way that we can get these people who own this to give us some sort of guarantee that maybe they won't sell clips that hold 100 bullets, and maybe they won't sell AK-47s or AK-15s. That would be my hope, that if they are into hunting and fishing, then let them sell hunting and fishing. Nobody shoots deer with an AK-15. Thanks.
Thank you. Lee Quintana.
Question before. This is on a totally different subject. Do you want to hear all the other?
No, this is 3 minutes verbal communications, whatever it is.
Okay. Then I will address you on a request for reconsideration of the council's action on the Los Gatos Theater. The council policy provides for reconsideration if there is new information or there is new analysis or circumstances warrant that reconsideration of the motion be made. I believe the circumstances are warranted for the following reasons. There were questions that were requested by both the audience and council that were not answered directly. These included how many parking spaces there were, what was the maximum occupancy allowed, as well as other questions, including how the combined project under CEQA of both permits met the requirement that of 15301 for an exemption from CEQA. Also, the analysis that was done was mainly on the difference between the previously existing permit and the approved permit rather than on existing conditions and new information that's available regarding movie theaters and how they generate traffic, etc. For example, I reviewed some literature and found that the ITE redefined movie theaters, added a new designation. However, it still doesn't apply to this particular instance. And the analysis that was done for this never included the new use as a special events permit event. Some of the general findings, none of the studies were exactly applicable, but some of the general findings are, and I believe that this application should be reviewed based on specific studies for this use. Some of the findings were that traffic generation was higher in suburban areas than in urban areas, that square footage or the number of seats was not as good a predictor of traffic generation as the number of screens. As the number of screens increased, the generation decreased. That when there were restaurants in the area, when the percentage of restaurants was higher,
Thank you.
There was more.
I understood that. Larry Arzi.
Good evening. You learn in political science class that local councils must control their staff. Ours certainly needs oversight. Leaving out pertinent information in your packets, interpreting zoning inconsistently, therefore undermining our districts and not being forthright. The low manufacturing district on University Avenue is littered with retail, causing rents to rise and low manufacturings to move. Where will we service our cars? Campbell, I guess. The same scenario takes place in the Central Business District, where 22% of the first block of North Santa Cruz Avenue is alcohol-oriented. CUPs often not required for professional uses there. This too increases rents and undermines the district. Staff does this for you. The new theater CUP was approved with questionable information supplied by staff. Parking was not fully explored and left unclear. You were asked if the application meets the parking requirements. Staff answer was yes. And by playing a game with smoke and mirrors, they factored in less chairs downstairs and moving the rest upstairs, which is nonsense. The apparent space and the apartment space and the unusable attic space without raising the roof were never part of the parking district. Residential was never assessed into the district, and nor was unusable attic space. Therefore, these are classified as new spaces and never part of the parking district. And the cure is simple. They need to provide parking. Some property owners adjusted upwards their assessment obligations by bringing like spaces into compliance. The theater did not do this. The Opera House and upstairs over Belanger, when intensifying their upstairs spaces, were made to provide real parking places and even valet service. Numerous other properties were obligated to buy into the parking district for ghost spaces. You all remember those. The theater is not being asked to do this. Why? Why? Is this fair to those who follow the rules? I'm giving you this new information in hopes that you will revisit the application and reapprove it the right way. We cannot allow upstairs CUPs without providing parking and paying for it.
Thank you. Kyle Subo? That's not supposed to say try, say good job.
How's it going, council members? I'm here to support the opening of Templar Sports. I don't live in the town of Los Gatos, but I use the local parks in the area. I feel like this town is open to people who are trying to open small businesses, and I really support them. And I know some of the owners personally. I know that they're professionals, and I know that they know what they're doing. And I think this will be okay for this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Krista Niedermeyer?
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me here today. My name is Kristen Niedermeyer, and I'm here to support my support of Templar Sports. I also have known one of the owners for over 10 years. If there's anything I can say about his character, safety has always been his number one priority in anything he's done. They have a commitment to really supporting this town, bringing in business, but doing it in a way that's really a true commitment to safety. One of the things that I'm not sure everyone's aware of is that they have a plan to offer free safety classes to community members to help fill a void of which I feel is having enough safety classes around the use of these firearms. One of the other things that we haven't talked about as much here is I'm also looking forward to being able to walk down the street, because I am a resident of Los Gatos, and get a fishing license. That's going to be something that's also, is a good portion of this business as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Will Dowd Martin?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Will Dowd Martin. I am a resident of Los Gatos. I live at 324 Bella Vista Avenue, right up the street. First of all, I'd like to say that I respect all of the comments made here this evening, and I appreciate the process. I am here on behalf of Templar Sports. I do support the business. I do believe that the owners and operators of Templar Sports will conduct their business professionally, with integrity and concern for the residents of Los Gatos. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Peter O'Day?
Good evening, council members. As a former resident of the town of Los Gatos and a current resident of the neighboring Camion district, I'd like to voice my support for Templar Sports. I believe that the owners and operators of this business will conduct their business in a professional and safe manner. And I also believe that it does not pose a significant threat to public safety. Further, I do believe it's also a legitimate business opportunity that in a down economy will bring revenue and growth to the town of Los Gatos. And I'd like to again voice my support for Templar Sports, and thank you for the process tonight and all the comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Dorsa.
Hi, my name is Paul Dorsa. I live in 15785 Shannon Road, Los Gatos, and own the Opera House at 140 West Main Street. I'd like to speak in favor of the gun shop or sporting goods store, whatever you want to call it, that's coming in. I think we need it in our community. Should be noted that the horrible, tragic events that just happened last week had more to do with the person than it had to do with the gun. And the bottom line of all this is that most places of the 50-odd things that's massacres that's happened like this in the last 70 years, only one has took place in an area that everybody could have a handgun or a gun on them. In Colorado, there were 6 theaters that had the same movie playing, that the one that shot up everybody chose one theater. All 5 other ones allowed people to carry weapons inside, except for the one that did not. And the school tragedy that happened back east is an individual thing of a complete nut. I don't know how you could have stopped it under any conditions. But had any of the teachers or principal had a gun with them, probably there would have not been anybody killed there, because he would have gone somewhere else. At any rate, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the last card that I have. All right, if you're going to speak, please bring up your cards, give them to the clerk so we can keep the process moving.
Hi, good evening. My name is...
Please, hold on a minute. Let me get the card from the clerk. Are you Vilma or Roxanne?
I'm Roxanne.
All right. Roxanne.
Panicaci.
There you go.
Hi, my name is Roxanne Panicaci, and I live on Golf Links Drive in Los Gatos. And I wanted to speak today briefly to, for myself, I plan to attend the area adjacent to Templar Sports 3 to 4 times a week to take my 3 children to a class there that they will be taking and have been taking until this particular area moves to this new location. And so I have some concerns in that regard, and maybe this will help, this next meeting that you have, and giving some more information. I appreciate that. And I also wanted to mention that in my knowledge, and my children have walked from Dave's Avenue School, where they go to school, to Fisher Middle School. So my understanding is that this location is within walking distance to both Dave's Avenue Elementary School and Fisher Middle School. That's what I would like to say today. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one more card. Vilma Huertas.
Hi, my name is Vilma Huertas. I'm a resident. I have 2 young children currently attending 2nd and 3rd grade. This is actually my first time here, and I came in short notice, so my notes are kind of a little bit jumpy. But I'm here because I'm just going to read what I have right now. Given the recent events, it is clear to me that the ease of access to weapons in this country needs to change. To me, it is clear. I appreciate all the comments of the people here. I understand also that the owners of Templar Sport may conduct their business with utmost responsibility and concern to safety. But what I'm concerned is not them selling equipment, but necessarily the people who get access to that kind of certain kind of equipment. I am not necessarily opposed to fishing or hunting, but there are certain kinds of weapons that are just simply not used for hunting. I request the council to please do whatever is possible to strictly limit not only the amount, but the kind of firearms that will be sold if you do grant that license. I agree with one of the people that said that initially they thought that, people don't kill people as guns that kill people. And I think that gun control is something that needs to happen in this country. And here you have an opportunity to make that change happen. It's not about the people that are responsible. I am sure that the owners of Temple Sports might have safety classes, but it's the people that don't attend those safety classes that I'm concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, my last card, Christina Enriking.
Thank you, Mayor Spector, council members. My name is Christina Enneking. I'm also a Los Gatos resident. I live on Fairview Plaza. And again, I'm deeply concerned about the permit with Templar Sports. I teach yoga, and I am actually involved with consulting in this community. And one of the things I see, especially with young children, is the amount of stress and anxiety that they are facing at very early stages. And I hear things from these children about wanting to take out anger on others, and I think it's very similar to what we saw down in Newton, Connecticut. What my hope is that we are able to, as a community, help to protect our children, our innocent lives, and do so in a way that is limiting this business permit, the ability for them to market, the ability for them to extend their operations. I feel that it behooves us to protect the children in this community. This is a community that's based on all of us living here in a very safe environment. And I would hope that we are able to continue to take that and take what has happened as an event across the country into our purview and make some action going forward. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. As I said, I have no more cards. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward and address us in verbal communications on any issue that is not on our agenda? Seeing no one coming forward, I will now close verbal communications, but I do have a question of staff. Ms. Quintana raised the issue of parking in the parking district. And while this council person is not prepared to do a motion for reconsideration, I know it is not clear in my mind how what the parking requirements are for expanded or new development within the parking district. So I'm asking staff, is this something that we can explore, have answered?
We could certainly come back to a future council meeting and answer that question in a public session. As was reported to council with the theater approval, any addition of square footage, of physical square footage, would clearly require additional parking. Issues have been raised tonight and in emails over the last week that raise questions about the historic applicability of parking standards in the parking district, and we could certainly report back to council on that at a future study session or regular meeting.
I understand that Sandy Bailey is the staff person best equipped to answer those questions.
Absolutely.
Considering when she would return, can we choose a date now for a report back to us?
The mayor sets the agenda for future council meetings, so it could be any of your first 3 meetings in the new year. The January 22nd meeting is already quite full. Earlier tonight, you added an item to the February 4th meeting. We could add another item to either of those meetings or schedule this for February 22nd.
Well, then why do we do February 22nd to push it out, to give Ms. Bailey as much time as possible? Thank you.
And Madam Mayor, I was wondering if I could also just clarify a couple questions that were brought up in verbal communication.
Certainly.
Sure. First, the area where Templar Sports is located has been zoned to include retail since at least 1987. So I did want to correct that statement that was made by a couple speakers. Retail has been explicitly allowed there since at least 1987. Second, they will be required to get a sign permit and to comply with the town's sign code, which regulates external signage, window coverage, and the like. We are optimistic that they will go beyond the minimum standards of our sign codes and are hopeful they will be responsive to many of the concerns raised by the community tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Leonardis?
Thank you, Mayor Spector. I just wanted to bring the town manager's attention to the calendar. You said February 22nd, and I think it's the 19th.
It's the 19th, correct.
Right. Thank you.
How about the February 19th? Thank you, Mr. Leonardis. Ms. Jensen?
Actually, I have a question for Mr. Larson based on his comments. The Templar location has bars on the windows now, and I think that that's required for a firearms store, but that can't possibly comply with our town code and design guidelines. So I would like to get some information on how we could do something about that. Maybe it's appropriate, maybe it's not, but bars on windows is not a good thing in communities, regardless of what's behind it.
We'll add that to the staff referral.
Thank you. All right, since verbal communications are not something that is formally before us and nothing that we can make decisions on, I am now going to go to other business. And we have one item on other business, number 12, PPW job number 1017, Almond Grove Street Rehabilitation Project update. The staff report, as I understand it, will be made by Todd Capurso. Mr. Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Spector. This is the item that you mentioned earlier that I would be recusing myself on, so I'd like to do that now.
Oh, you want to leave early is what you want to do. All right. Thank you. Mr. Capurso.
Thank you very much, Mayor, members of the council. Nothing clears out a room quite like quality public infrastructure. So we will begin our presentation tonight on a subject that you've had before you before, Almond Grove District and the street reconstruction. Although there has been funding in the CIP for several years to take a look at this area, it was not until the budget hearings for fiscal year 2010-11 with council that the scope was defined for the then upcoming budget year. I should also note that we're conducting this presentation tonight in preparation of a capital study session that the council will be holding on CIP priorities for the upcoming fiscal year that we will conduct on January 22nd of 2013. But because the Almond Grove project is full of complexities and presents a range of solutions, staff wanted council to have have this information in advance of that study session. There we go. So the conditions of the streets in the Almond Grove have been a concern to the town for many years. And in response to this, council directed staff to perform a condition assessment and analysis of these streets in an effort to define the work required to bring these streets and associated infrastructure up to current standards. During the 2010-11 budget session with council, it was recommended that staff take a broader view of the area and look at all concrete streets in the area, not just those in the historic Almond Grove district. So we expanded the area to include streets farther west, which are predominantly asphalt streets, and south and west of the Almond Grove district, but also the Broadway Historic District as well. These findings were reported to council in early 2011. The aggregate cost of bringing all streets in the study area up to very good condition was reported to council at that time as being $19 million. There was also a recommended 4-phase implementation plan presented to council at that time, 2 of each phase for both concrete and asphalt streets. I'm sorry, let me go back to that slide for a second. As part of the town's pavement maintenance capital program, staff was able to include the first phase of the recommended asphalt work in the 2002 slurry program that we do annually, and is planning on including the second phase of asphalt streets in the 2013 contract as well. While this work, as is being done, does not fulfill all of the recommended actions in the earlier study, it does move all of the treated asphalt streets into the good condition category, as opposed to what the study recommended, which was to bring them into very good, almost like brand new condition. So all of this AC work, asphalt related work, will be completed at a cost of approximately $900,000 to treat the asphalt streets that were studied. I should note also at this time that in the study that you received almost 2 years ago, that work to bring those streets up to the very good condition with all of the reconstruction that was required was approximately $6 million worth of work. So we feel that we got good value for our money, spending $900,000 to bring those streets up into the up into PCIs of above 70. So that was the good news, that we were able to take care of a large geographic area for a relatively small amount of money when compared to $19 million. And that now allows us to turn our attention to the remaining concrete streets. I'm having great luck with this tonight. There we go. So this is a geographic representation of the asphalt streets versus the concrete streets. The blue streets are the asphalt streets that we are currently working our way through with our Cape Seal work. And this includes 3 composite streets. So a composite street is we would formerly classify as a concrete street, but it's had asphalt treatments done to it over the years. And that mainly means that the concrete was kind of broken up and asphalt overlays were then applied to it. We can now maintain those streets the same way that we would maintain other asphalt streets. So as you can see from a graphic perspective, the asphalt streets, the elimination of the asphalt streets from future consideration allows us to greatly narrow the scope of what we need to discuss from here on out. Many of the remaining concrete streets, but not all, are in designated historic districts, and I will come back to that historic designation toward the end of the presentation. Also, you will note that this map differs from earlier ones that you may have seen in that Royce Avenue is no longer being designated on this. Because we did include the Royce Avenue reconstruction as part of our asphalt work in a previous fiscal year. So now Royce is no longer asphalt, no longer concrete. It is a good condition asphalt street. This slide is mainly to provide us all a reminder that any street reconstruction project will need to address other street-related infrastructure in the public right-of-way. These elements, as currently built, are not built to current standards. And by that I mean either from a construction perspective or from an accessibility perspective. Any and all new construction would address these issues. We can also revisit street alignment issues as part of these reconstruction projects as well. You'll note that if you walk through the area, it's hard to make out from these photos, but some of the park strip areas are particularly narrow, and we may need to reconsider that at pedestrian crossings to provide proper ADA accessibility to increase pedestrian safety, and may also have an effect on traffic calming if we do them in an appropriate manner. So some of the key issues that we would like to focus on, regardless of the construction type of how we reconstruct the current concrete streets, the impacts will certainly be significant, especially during the demolition process. There will be noise, dust, and vibrations as the streets are shaken up to demolish the existing concrete. Access will be limited and could be for extended periods of time as we rebuild entire sections of roadway. The impacts could also affect the downtown businesses in that the side street routes in and around downtown may be closed for extended periods of time. During construction, temporary access and on-street parking will need to be addressed as well, in that we would also be displacing current residents' ability to park on the streets in front of their homes, and almost certainly the ability to access their homes for perhaps extended periods of time. This may result in a phasing process that we may be best served to approach this in phases, which can be both good and bad in that by phasing a project over a longer period of time can limit the impacts at any one time, but then extends the duration. So we've got to consider, is it best to pack all of the impacts into a shorter time frame, or is it best to kind of play those down, but it will certainly have longer term impacts. Life cycle costing and the cost of both maintenance as well as what condition we want the streets to be maintained in over the course of their life will be an issue. And as I mentioned before, of course, pedestrian bicycle safety and traffic calming improvements could be incorporated to any reconstruction that we do. From a cost analysis perspective, you will see that we still have a very similar spread between reconstruction with concrete and reconstruction with asphalt as we had almost 2 years ago. The gap is a little bit wider now. That's about a 17% gap between the $11.8 million to reconstruct with asphalt and the $13.8 million to construct with concrete. The projected maintenance costs over a 50-year period are nearly 5 times higher for asphalt versus concrete reconstruction. But again, I would have to temper that by saying that was in the report that our consulting firm gave to us, and that is based on the assumption that the asphalt streets would be maintained in a exceptionally high condition over their lifespan. We do have some real-world experience, and I go back to the asphalt streets that we've just performed maintenance on, that to maintain them at the level where we would bring them up into brand new, extremely good condition was projected to cost $6 million, but based on our best practices that we put into play in other areas of town, our Cape Seal program in particular, we were able to do that work for $900,000. So that $24 million, I think, has a wide range associated with it, depending on the level of condition that we would be willing to accept from our asphalt streets. There are also likely some other unknowns for the reconstruction based on our Royce Avenue experience. We did find that the ground was exceptionally wet, required additional treatments where we had to let the ground kind of lay open for a week or so and then provide additional layers of soil treatment, which extended our predetermined construction length. So if we run into those issues, even with the best laid plans of phasing, construction could be delayed by unforeseen conditions. And of course, we would coordinate with all of our utility providers, particularly if we're going with concrete reconstruction, because that is that's a very unforgiving surface type. So if that needs to be trenched at a later date, you really can't perform any maintenance to then cover that up and have that blend back into the surrounding road surface. So again, why we were here tonight, first of all, we would like you to accept the report that we have provided to you. But we are also looking for you to provide staff direction in any or all of the following areas regarding implementation, phasing, outreach, construction material, and budget preparation that we can use as we head toward our January 22nd capital study session. And with that, we would be happy to take. I think the manager wants to add something now.
One other aspect that makes your January 22nd discussion so important that this is a prelude to is the $4 million project that the council previously approved as phase 1 for Almond Grove was with redevelopment dollars that have since been redirected by the state and the county. So the primary source of funds for phase 1 of Almond Grove are no longer available, and we will be presenting you alternatives for funding for Almond Grove at that January 22nd meeting. Knowing that through the work of PPW with the asphalt streets now being taken out of the equation, and that $6 million budget being removed, we've dropped the total cost from 9 million down to roughly 13 million, which is still not something we can do in one drop because we don't see having that much available one-time resources. But we are believing a first phase could be remain in the order of $3 to $4 million, depending on the council's prioritization of capital funding projects in January. So, looking for information from you on the phasing of streets and whether it's a 5-year, 10-year horizon to complete it, a 2-year, will be important for us to develop materials for that January 22nd meeting. And we also are aware we have a fair amount of community outreach we need to do with the public following that January 22nd meeting on the impact of asphalt construction versus concrete on their day-to-day lives during the construction window. Those are my additional comments.
Thanks to you, staff. Questions of staff? Mr. Brzezinski.
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. Would you go back to the slide that has the cost analysis? I'm hearing different things now. This was from our earlier study. Okay.
Yes, that is correct.
And then the manager just said, with what we've done up on the western part of the district, it's gone from 9 million to 13 million. Is that a reverse, you mean?
It went from 19 million to
19
13
million. Okay, that's I thought I'd missed something in there. And then on this 24 million for projected 50-year maintenance, probably beyond our time, but you say it would be now approximately 6 million. Is that what you were talking about, Mr. Corso?
No, it's hard to read. It's really hard to get a read on that because that 24 million is based on maintaining all of those streets if they were constructed with asphalt at a if I can put this in PCI terms, in the 85 to 90 range, which is not something that we have been able to maintain elsewhere in town. Our PCI hovers in the low 70s. I think we just crossed from 71 back up to 72, but that's a level of maintenance that we don't perform elsewhere in town.
Okay, so realistically, what our standard practice is, what would the number look like at this point? Best guess.
Under 10.
Okay, so under 10 sounds good. All right, there was something in the language of your report. It was on, if I might, Madam Mayor.
Certainly.
On page 3, it talked about the town code for street surfaces in this area to remain concrete construction to retain historic character. I did some research into the code, and I actually couldn't find anything that talked about concrete, talked about width of streets and those kinds of things. Could you give me what the language is?
We may have misnamed it. There's 2 ordinances that were passed by council, I believe, in 2008 that pertain to the historic districts. One is Ordinance 2165 that speaks specifically to the Almond Grove, and what it says is listed below, or I mean, it's on page 3. This is a very long ordinance, but Section E of that ordinance speaks to listed below are town features recommended for preservation. Review by the Historic Preservation Committee is required for any changes to these features. Item 1, roads are concrete and should be repaired to maintain appearance as of the year 1976. Dates, and then item 2 is date stamp in concrete sidewalks. And there's a similar ordinance for the Broadway district, which I'll give you the number on also here very shortly. Ordinance 2166, interestingly enough, that speaks to the concrete streets in the Broadway district, which as far as we know is only Broadway, and says something very similar, except the difference is roads are concrete and should be repaired to maintain appearance as of the year 1992.
So the ordinance does intend to preserve the concrete streets, but with HPC approval, we could go to asphalt. So it's not required, but it would take Historic Preservation Commission approval to not replace them with concrete streets.
All right, perfect. That clarifies that. Thank you.
More questions, Mr. Brzezinski? This is
None at
very
this
helpful.
time.
Okay. Anyone else? Ms. Jensen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Caperso, I'm curious, you said that there could be traffic calming incorporated, et cetera, if the streets were redone. I'm just curious whether undergrounding of utilities could be considered in that, and if it could be, what would be the cost and what would be the implications?
The big ticket item for undergrounding utilities is certainly going to be PG&E, and PG&E is interesting to work with at times. They do have a set aside that I may ask Kevin to chime in here in just a second for undergrounding utilities, and there is a allocation that goes to each municipality and each agency in the geographic area. They certainly have a set aside of funding for the town of Los Gatos. The interesting thing about that is that it will underground the utilities. Basically, it would replace the poles in any particular area, whether it's a business district or a residential area. But that's the extent of what they will underground. All of the service hookups at that point become the responsibility of the property owners. So we would have to be able to address this comprehensively, or probably not at all. So I'm going to turn around to Kevin and see if I've left anything out on that.
Yes, Councilmember Jensen. As far as the utility goes, I think Todd mentioned the PG&E, their main part is the overhead lines. That costs approximately, when we experienced with some other projects, about $400 per linear foot to underground PG&E poles. So if you measure any of the streets in the Almond Grove area, their length multiplied by $300 to $400, that's going to be a very expensive proposition, and that only, even though that seems an expensive price tag, the bigger part of it would be to do the services to each of the houses. Generally, in that area or most of the town, all of the houses are set up for overhead feed, and the electrical panels are set up that way. So it would be a very expensive and time-consuming, go house by house or business by business, if we ever do it for a commercial district, to convert the overhead services to underground.
Thank you.
Further questions?
Sure.
We need a question, Mr. President.
I have a question. So what is our orientation toward community outreach into the future?
We are certainly prepared to do that. This would be an area that I would suggest would be best approached comprehensively. So I think whatever direction we go, there might be room for an exception or two along the way, but we're dealing with the grid system of streets here. So we would certainly want to engage the entire community when that's appropriate. It might be more appropriate if we're going to consider a construction material change, but it will be appropriate in any case nonetheless to explain the construction impacts in the schedule. But I think we'd like to know kind of what we're talking about before we go out and talk to the community. So if we're going to entertain materials changes or have a sense as to what the priorities would be in terms of areas, which streets would come first, which streets are in the district as opposed to not in the district. So we've got, I don't want to say that we have more latitude, but we can certainly change street material if that's the will of the community on some streets without having to go back to historic preservation with historic preservation committee. So it's really like we'd like to get as much information on this up front, and then approach this as a cohesive package, even though it may have to be phased over 2 or 3 construction phases, which may take 5 to 10 years. But we'd be best served in having that plan, or at least a plan in our back pockets as we head out. So we're not quite prepared to do that yet. That's why we're really looking for the feedback tonight, but I could see us doing that maybe not immediately, but after we have your feedback and come back to the study session on the 22nd, that's something that I think we could do in the earlier part of 2013.
Further questions or input? All right. This can be a public hearing, or it is a public hearing. And so I see all of these folks in the audience who are just rushing to come up here and talk about CPIs and who knows what. But is there anyone in the audience who would like to address us on this issue? Seeing no one coming forward, I will close the public testimony of the hearing and turn to the council. I think staff is looking for direction. I don't think we're looking at a motion here. Ms. McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm still not clear exactly what direction staff is looking for, so I'll just say a few comments and you tell me if this is what you're looking for. I'll repeat what I said when we talked about this earlier, that given both the cost and the maintenance and just the misery that we're going to put on the homeowners, residents in those areas, as well as the businesses and St. Mary's and the school and so on, that I am open to exploring asphalt rather than concrete. And I think the community outreach is going to, as always, going to be really key on this, not only to make sure that all of those who are affected either directly or secondarily, but that are aware of it, but that it really be very clearly laid out the two options, the pros and cons of both, because this is going to be one of those competing values conversations that we still love to have, and so for people to weigh in on which value they're going to place as a higher priority, they really have to have a sense as to what they're talking about. And my other thing is, when we say no access to homes, I mean, are we saying that there is a situation where people would not be able to sleep in their homes unless they stay there and never go out for 2 or 3 days? I mean, what is that what we're saying?
Well, I hope that's not what we're saying. What I really was trying to, I guess what I was trying to say there is that there would be periods where there would not be a street in front of homes for perhaps weeks at a time. So people would have access to their homes, but it would not be vehicular access. So that's where I talked about perhaps temporarily relaxing our on-street parking rules and regs, because we might have to have the folks who live on one particular block do on-street parking around the corner or on the next block over, because that's as close as they would get their cars to their homes. But at no point would we would tell people they could not have physical access to their homes. So,
good.
So my apologies. Yeah, otherwise it would cost a little bit more money, I'm sure.
And fortunately, there are the alleys
yes.
Over in that area, and
Correct.
so that provides they don't necessarily have parking back there because they've converted it all into little granny use and stuff, but at least there is some additional access. So is that what you are looking for?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, then I don't have anything more to say.
Thank you. I'll jump in now. I agree with Ms. McNutt. I didn't actually know quite what you wanted either, but if you're looking for an openness for either concrete or asphalt, both are fine. I encourage an educated decision by the people, by the neighbors, by the residents. I don't know how they feel now, but I do know that in 2008, when this issue came up when I was running for office, the people in that area really wanted concrete, and they wanted it now. But there may be a difference, and there may be an even greater difference when you explain the pros and the cons. So that's all the input I have. Anybody else? Mr. Przinski.
Yes, and to kind of segue on what the mayor just said, I've gotten both comments. I've gotten comments from people who say, got to be concrete. It's not historic if it's not concrete. And I've heard other people say the only value of concrete is its natural traffic calming because the road is so bad. And so people have to slow down going through the neighborhood. But I've heard other people say, I want to get a street out there. It's time for us to move forward. How do we do this in as efficient and economical way as possible? And that's why I was recommending at the front end that, or asking whether we were going to do outreach, because I think I kind of see this similar to what we do with traffic calming in the neighborhood streets, that you're never going to get 100% buy-in. So we may want to take a look at what would be the percentage, and maybe it's the same percentage as we use for traffic calming. What are the most logical, rational kind of percentages that we could ask and somehow have a sense that we've got a super majority in this neighborhood that want to get one type or the other. And my concern is that we want to make sure that the information we provide is as congruent and as complete as possible, that the numbers are no longer fuzzy numbers, that these are the real numbers we can project as of the time we really think we're going to be able to move forward with this. This is the real time extent that it's going to take, that you will have no front door access, at least off the street, to your home. This will be the type of work that needs to be done in those curb and gutter and sidewalk replacements, all those kinds of things in as much detail as we possibly can. I was able to observe what happened over on Royce, and I was kind of intrigued because I think Royce was a microcosm of what you got in the Almond Grove, and it looked to me like the concrete that was laid without rebar on dirt. And it was maybe 4 inches or 5 inches of concrete, and therefore, if that's what the Almond Grove is, then that whole thing is going to have to be, demolished, as was pointed out, and in effect start from the base over. I know that's a much more expensive project when we have to do that. I also think that to have the entire package ready to go would be my recommendation to staff, that's what you work on between now and the time when we feel like we need to go out to the community. But how we're going to pay for this, to me, is probably the deal breaker. Because if we might be able to scrape 2 or 3 million together, 3 or 4 million together to do 2 streets, what does that say to the rest of the environment? How does doing 2 streets, let's say Tate and Bachman, since they're through streets, how do we do those, let's say in asphalt when everything around them is concrete? Does that make a difference? And then what is the time gap between the completion of those streets and the next phase and the phase after that? So this is pretty complex, and so all of those things I'd like us to address before we get to the point where we're actually telling anybody that they're going to get a street in the near future, because that'll raise the expectations, so we may not be able to fulfill them within the expectation level that our neighbors have. And I have no problem this going back to the historic preservation folks. I mean, if that's what the language says, then that's where it goes. And I see, if we were to come to a point where asphalt is preferable to concrete because of the material aspect, historic preservation has been really good about making the adjustments to maintaining character of, let's say, window treatments, but including double pane, where it really never happened once upon a time. So I think that it's the historic preservation folks are going to be involved in this at all phases of the process.
Thank you. And listening to Mr. Przinski, I agree. What I would anticipate you're going to be doing when you go out to the public is, what you gave us is just give us input. But what I would see, you're going to have to be much more defined. It's going to have to be a decision point. And then if you have that decision point one way, yes, it goes down that way. And if it's a no, it goes the other way. I see this as a very defined methodology that I would suggest you be prepared to present to the people in Los Gatos. Anything else? All right. Staff have anything else on this item?
We are complete. I do think we are asking for an acceptance of the report, but does that need a motion?
I don't believe it needs a formal motion.
Okay, and before I adjourn, I just want to thank those of you up here on the dais and council and staff and the public for the professional and courteous way you handled a very wide array of issues this evening. I wish you happy holidays, and I'll see you on January 22nd. Meeting's adjourned.